Season 2, Part 1, Haunted by Loss. The cold bit through Busty's thin jacket as he sat on the cracked steps of the bus stop. The night was thick and silent, except for the distant hum of a street lamp flickering. His fingers trembled, not from the chill, but from the ache deep inside his bones. The dull, grinding pain had become a constant companion, an unyielding reminder of years of abuse, neglect, and everything he'd lost. He pulled out a crumpled pack of cigarettes, lit one with shaky hands, and took a long drag. The smoke curled around him like invisible chains. His throat burned, but the relief was temporary. A cigarette never fixed anything. Neither did the bottle tucked in his worn backpack. His thoughts wandered back to another time. A time when he was a boy, safe and warm in his grandparents' small house on the edge of town. He could still smell the faint scent of freshly baked bread, the soft humming of his grandmother in the kitchen, and the hearty laughter of his grandfather as he tended the garden. Those memories were like distant stars, faint, but still shining. Back then, love wasn't something you had to chase. It was just there, like the sun in the sky or the grass beneath your feet. His grandparents had given him something no one else could: kindness, patience, and a home where he felt he belonged. But those days were gone. Now, his family looked at him with a mixture of pity, anger, and disgust. His children no longer answered his calls, avoiding the drunken voice on the other end. His brothers sneered when they saw him in the streets, whispering behind his back about his failures. His parents barely acknowledged his existence, their eyes cold and distant. He was the town's forgotten man, a shadow lurking on the edges of life, scraping by with nothing but a bottle in his hand and smoke between his fingers. And yet, despite it all, Busty still held a flicker of hope inside him, a desperate wish to change. To be better. To somehow rewrite the story his life had become. But every morning was a battle. The pain in his body was relentless. His bones throbbed, muscles screamed, and his mind fogged under the weight of regret and loneliness. The world didn't wait for him to heal. It pushed him down, again and again. On nights like this, the silence of the street pressed in on him, and the darkness, the one that had lived in the hollow house, seemed to reach out, whispering just beyond hearing. The hollow house had been torn down years ago, its crumbling walls reduced to rubble, but its shadow lingered like a stain on the neighborhood. Tonight, as he exhaled a long plume of smoke, Busty saw a flicker of movement down the street, a shadow slipping silently where the house once stood. The air grew colder, heavier, as if the ground itself was breathing. The whispers started again, soft and insistent, tugging at the edges of his mind. The house was calling. And so was he. Part 2, A Chance Encounter. The diner smelled of stale coffee and fried grease, but Busty welcomed the familiarity. He sat in a corner booth, staring into his half-empty cup as if it held answers. The worn wooden table was scratched and scarred, much like his own life. Today, he'd made an effort, a clean shirt, hair combed back, and no bottle in his pocket. Small victories were rare these days. The chatter of other patrons faded into a dull roar as Busty's thoughts drifted. His mind kept circling back to his grandparents, their gentle smiles, the warmth of their home. He wondered if they would recognize the man he had become. Suddenly, a presence shifted across from him. An old woman with silver hair and eyes sharp as a hawk slid into the seat without asking. Her wrinkled hands rested calmly on the table. She wasn't the kind to waste words. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world, son," she said softly, her voice creaking like an old door. Busty blinked, unsure how to respond. Most people avoided him or looked away, but there was something in her gaze that felt different, honest, maybe even kind. "I know what it's like to feel hollow," she continued. "Pain that sticks to your bones and shadows your days. You don't have to carry it alone." Her words touched a chord. Busty hesitated before speaking, his voice rough. "My grandparents, they told me stories about this town, about the old house on Lorne Lane. They said it was more than just bricks and wood. It was a door. Between worlds." The woman nodded slowly. That house held things. Things that waited for the right time to reach out. Sometimes, those things find their way to people like you, people who've been forgotten. Busty swallowed hard, feeling the tremble in his hands grow stronger. What do I do? How do I stop the darkness? She reached into her worn coat pocket and pulled out a small wooden pendant carved into the shape of a heart. She placed it on the table between them. This belonged to your grandmother, she said quietly. It's a reminder, love doesn't leave us, even when the world turns its back. But love also comes with choices. Hard ones. Before Busty could ask more, the woman stood, gave a faint smile, and walked out into the morning light. The bell above the door jingled softly behind her. Busty stared at the pendant, feeling a flicker of something unfamiliar, hope. Part 3, Small Steps. Busty stared at the wooden heart in his palm as he walked the cracked sidewalks of Lorne Lane. The pendant felt warm against his skin, like a fragile promise. He didn't know what the old woman meant by choices, but something about her words stirred something deep inside, a spark he hadn't felt in years. That day, he tried. For once, he left the bottle alone. He dusted off an old resume, ragged and stained, and headed to the local job center. The clerk barely looked up, her eyes glazed with exhaustion as she handed him a flyer for day labor. The work was hard and the pay was barely enough to cover a meal, but Busty took it anyway. Each swing of the hammer, each scrape of the shovel, was a small rebellion against the weight dragging him down. At home, the silence was deafening. His phone stayed silent, no calls from his children, no messages from anyone. But he clutched the pendant like a lifeline, whispering to himself that change was possible. He called his brother that evening. The line crackled, and after a long pause, the voice on the other end was cold. Why are you calling now? You've been gone for years. I'm trying, Busty said quietly. I want to be better. The line went dead. The sting of rejection burned fresh, but the pendant pressed against his chest reminded him, this was just the start. At night, the shadows crept in again. He swore he heard whispers in the walls, felt eyes watching from the dark corners. The house was quiet, but the darkness wasn't gone. It lurked, patient, waiting. Busty clenched his fists. He knew the road ahead would be full of pain and failure, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't ready to give up. Part 4, Darkness Returns. The nights grew colder, and Busty felt the chill seep deeper than the skin. His bones ached with a relentless fury, but it wasn't just the physical pain anymore. Something else was creeping back into his life, a shadow darker than the one cast by the street lamps. It started with whispers. Soft, distant voices that seemed to curl around his thoughts when he was alone. Then came the dreams, twisted, fractured memories of the old house, the cracked mirrors, and the creature with 1,000 teeth. One night, as he sat on his worn couch, the pendant glowed faintly in the dark. The warmth it had given him felt hollow now, like a fading ember. He gripped it tightly, but the shadows in the room seemed to move closer, reaching for him with cold fingers. His phone vibrated, but no message came through. Instead, a faint voice whispered, "You belong here, Busty. The darkness is your home." Panic surged through him. He stumbled to the window and looked out onto Lorne Lane. The street was empty, but the streetlights flickered like a heartbeat slowing to a stop. He felt the familiar pull, the call of the darkness beneath the earth, waiting for him to come back. The house might be gone, but the curse was not. Busty sank to the floor, clutching his aching ribs. The pain in his body was nothing compared to the war inside his mind. The creature was back, in a way. A part of him, the part that had given up long ago, was trying to drag him back into the abyss. But Busty wasn't ready to surrender. He whispered into the darkness, "Not yet." Part 5, Crossroads. Days bled into nights with no clear line between them. Busty's body throbbed with pain that felt like fire beneath his skin, and his mind waged war against the shadows clawing at his soul. Every step toward change was met with a violent push backward. His hands trembled not only from the bone-deep ache but from the fear of losing himself again. The pendant's wooden heart lay on his bedside table, dull and cold. The warmth it once held had faded, much like his hope. Yet, it was all he had left to hold on to. One evening, as rain hammered against the cracked windowpane, Busty sat alone in the dim light. His phone vibrated, a rare text from an unknown number: "You're stronger than you think." No signature. No explanation. Was it the old woman? Or something else? He didn't know. But the message stirred something, a fragile thread of courage weaving through the thick fog of despair. Busty faced a choice: sink into the darkness that beckoned with promises of oblivion, or fight for a future where love and respect might still be possible. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the pain in his joints settle just enough for clarity. "I choose to fight," he whispered. "Not for them, for me." The room seemed to shift around him. Shadows flickered, then recoiled. The darkness did not vanish, but for the first time, it hesitated. Busty knew this was only the beginning. The hardest battles were still ahead. But at least now, he stood at the crossroads, and for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid to walk forward. Part 6, Confrontation. The night air was thick with fog as Busty approached the place where the old hollow house had once stood. The rubble had been cleared, but the earth beneath was scarred, as if the ground itself remembered the darkness that had lived there. The pendant around his neck pulsed faintly, a heartbeat in the silence. Busty's breath came in shallow gasps, his muscles aching more than ever, but his resolve was steel. He had to face this, the darkness that had haunted his family for generations. As he knelt in the dirt, he whispered his grandparents' names, calling out to the love and kindness they had once given him. The ground trembled, and a whisper rose from the earth, cold, ancient, but not entirely cruel. "You carry their blood, and their pain," the voice said. "But also their strength." Busty's heart pounded. Shadows shifted around him, coalescing into a figure, neither friend nor foe, but a mirror of his own struggle. This was the curse that had shaped him, the legacy he had tried to run from. But now, it was time to claim it, to break the cycle. The creature's many eyes watched him, waiting for a choice. Busty stood tall, pain searing through every bone. "I am not your victim," he said. "I am more than my mistakes. I choose to fight." The shadows recoiled, dissolving into the cold night air. For the first time, Busty felt the weight begin to lift. Part 7, Longing for Light. Dawn broke slowly over Lorne Lane, painting the sky in pale gold and soft pinks. Busty stood at the edge of the empty lot where the hollow house once stood, the first rays warming his weathered face. The night's confrontation still echoed in his bones, but for the first time in years, the pain felt different, sharper, yes, but filled with purpose. The pendant around his neck, carved by his grandmother's hands, rested against his chest. It no longer pulsed with fear but with quiet strength. Busty thought about his family, the cold looks, the unanswered calls, the long years of silence. He knew they might never change their minds, might never see him as more than the drunk who lost his way. But he also knew he didn't need their approval anymore. He had fought the darkness within and around him. He had faced the ghosts of his past and refused to be consumed. And now, for the first time, Busty could imagine a different future. Maybe it wouldn't be perfect. Maybe the pain and loneliness would never fully leave. But he could carry it differently, with hope, with kindness, and with the memory of love that never truly died. He took a deep breath and turned toward the street. The world was waiting, cold, unforgiving, and uncertain. But so was life. And Busty was ready to walk forward.